Handle your high with Tadayoshi.
And we're live again. We're back with High with Tadayoshi. Handle your high with Tadayoshi. And I got my new recurring co-host, Mike, DMT Mike. We call him DMT Mike. Why do we call him DMT Mike? Well, Mike's been a psychedelic journeyer for a little bit here. Something that I'm kind of envious of, because this year Mike and I've been talking about this intensively. It's kind of serendipitous because I was his coach for a while, and then we hadn't talked for quite some time, but then connected up, I think last year or something, not too long ago, and we kind of spurred on this conversation, just happened to connect up and talk about it, and then this year connected up, and then I wanted to talk about going on like an ayahuasca journey or some of these things that I want to do, and but you've done some DMT and has some pretty wild experience. Well, tell everybody about DMT Mike and what's that all about?
Well, I'm pretty new to the DMT, but it's just something that I did a few months back, and it just felt like it was calling me, that I had to try it. We all know that, not all of us, but some of us feel that there's something more out there, and this pretty much was kind of to solidify what I've already been feeling probably since I was a kid.
Well, the funny thing is,
there's something else.
And we both watch Joe Rogan's podcast, and he considers himself a psychedelic journeyer. What does he call himself? Psychedelic warrior, something like that. And and he's done lots. And I actually was just watching one of the episodes today with, I forgot the fella's name, but they were talking a little bit about some of the research around psychedelics, and then what they're finding out is that it's completely non-toxic, and it is very, very safe if done correctly. But even in high dosage, like, you just can't. It's really difficult to, like, they were saying that it's really that they're hoping that in the future, and Oregon is the closest to legalizing it, because right now I think some of the DMT and some of the other, like psilocybin, which is really the mushrooms, the psychedelic mushrooms, that it's illegal in most places except Oregon. I think is getting to the point where it looks like in the near future it might get legalized, which would be really great, because there's so many wonderful health benefits and modality. You can use it for medical. There's a lot of medicinal value that it has for people who stopping smoking, addiction, most addictions. And I've read about this, but also rewiring the brain. There's some really fascinating stuff going on with, like, rewiring. Again, this is all based on hearsay. This is how but the evidence shows that people use it and they stop stuttering. Like, people who stutter, all of a sudden stop stuttering. There's even some stuff that I was seeing now that they were doing some things with allergies, like weird shit. Like people who have allergies all their whole life, or who are allergic to something like dogs, or can all of a sudden now, like, not have allergies after they have a couple of trips. They take it and so slowly wean in moderate doses and expose them to the allergens, and then all of a sudden, and it has, I think, the way they were describing it, I'll have to get some research and get some notations on this. But I think what's going on is it really unlocks. Now, you can tell me from your experience if you feel it really sort of kind of unlocks some of our ability, because I believe that we have the ability, and I'm not the only one. Actually, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who does a lot of research in this for the last 30-something years, is the first one to talk about this that I know of, that we have the ability to turn off and on genes based on what our beliefs, based on these things that we have within us. And that's exciting. And I actually have, when I do a lot of coaching with my athletes and my people, I do a lot of stuff with mindset, and much of it revolves around beliefs, because the limiting beliefs that we have controls a lot of what we get from the universe, what we get from our lives. If you don't believe something's going to happen, it is not going to happen. If you believe, and I mean,
100%.
Anything you like, just even something simple as your name. Like, somebody tells you what's your name, hey Mike, it's like someone says, hey Tom, like, you wouldn't answer. It's because you know what your name is, but you only know it because you believe it. Your name could very well. What if your mother told you tomorrow your name was like Bob? And but just always told you it was Mike. So it's just a belief is a very powerful thing, and it seems to hold true with there's some holistic, what do they call it, some of these holistic sort of integrated medicine people who actually preach this, and there's a lot of recorded evidence that show that your mind is the unlocking factor that will allow you to heal yourself. either heal yourself quicker or slower. And so I think that what might be going on with some of the DMT is that it's helping us to rewire or unlock beliefs or help us to get past some of the limiting beliefs quickly without a long process of sort of reformatting, if you will, our brains. But when you, in your experience, like talk about your experience a little bit when you did the DMT.
Well, so like when you were saying right now how it kind of unlocks and stuff like that, I can probably relate to that, and I think that it probably. I think we all have the ability, but with the DMT, it's just no bullshit. Like you do it, and you can't weasel your way out of it. You can't try to fake the experience, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen at that point. And I feel like after that, you kind of know what it feels like to be in a certain point.
It's like a sense of knowing.
It's a sense of knowing, right? And so now I'm really getting into meditation, and I'm trying to get back to the point where I was with the DMT. And I feel,
you're talking about like the feelings of expandedness.
The feeling of, right, the feeling of actually, like when you're on DMT, it's very hard to describe, but like before I would meditate, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I'm like, I'm trying to meditate. Now when I meditate, I'm trying to meditate, but I get to a certain point and I feel like I'm going down that DMT path again, which is activating the pineal gland. And I feel like something, I don't know if you want to say unlocked or maybe my pineal gland was calcified or whatever it was. I'm a completely different person in that aspect, because I'm still the same person, but I feel more spiritual. I feel
more, some people describe it as having that connected. They feel more connected with their inner being, their true self, the universe.
I feel more, definitely more connected with my inner self. I feel more connected with nature.
So what do you think was in the way? What do you think was in the way? Like if you were to try to, I know these are hard. So for most people who've never done anything like this, it's hard to probably, and I've never done it, but I've read so much and listened to so many accounts that they all seem to say the similar things.
I'll say what's in the way is the human belief. I think we've all been shaped to think a certain way, and that kind of puts, I think, a curtain on us, and we don't really feel that it's pretty much unlimited, that it's just like they say, like whatever we can imagine, we can, it's something like that. And once you experience this DMT, you realize you're like, holy crap, like there's way more than whatever we've been told, and people get so stuck on religions and all these different things. But the truth is, man, it all goes to one source, And
I have a belief, and I'm not the only one. I've over the last several years, I have been on this sort of intense spiritual sort of connection, spiritual journey. I've been on one my whole life, really, but the last couple of years has been more intense, especially with integrating meditation. And of course, mine. I think your journey so far has been, I think that psychedelics, DMT, psychedelics, psilocybin, all these kinds of things, they kind of speed that process up because you get this sense of knowing. And I think it's because. Now this is just me presupposing some things, but I think it's because when these bodies, we're sort of like. These bodies are like we're in like a video game, right? Like we're this is just a machinery that our consciousness is animating, is inhabiting, and we get to sort of play in this experience here in these physical bodies. And when the DMT sort of in some way for whatever reason allows us to sort of jump back out of that, because you always hear about this out of body experience, like they feel one with the universe, they feel like they lose this. Sensation of their body, time, place, presence, all that stuff goes away, and then now they feel oneness. And I think it's because truly this energy, this consciousness, whatever you want to call it, when we leave this, you can know it logically, but until you experience it, then you really have it's really difficult to sort of have that real sense of knowing that gives you the real presence of it, and so that's what I think is why it's hard to describe, but. Because of that, I think that you when you realize that you're energy, and you really realize that, not just saying it, not just really, really, really know it in that truest sense, then you realize that you do have the unlimited potential. We can. I think this is why people are able to heal themselves more completely with some of these experiences, because now they're able to command the physical presence, their bodies, in a much more powerful way. We can create more, because we're creators by nature. That's what we are. We're creators. We came here to create, right? Create an experience, create our lives. And the people that really get this, who are really experiencing it with their life, because I know that the only way we really learn, the only way we really know, is through experience. You and I could talk to each other, we could explain things to each other, and we could have a certain level of knowing with that. And listeners could hear these things and have a certain level of knowing. But that deep sense of knowing, that sense of knowing, like when you say, oh yeah, I love this person. But until you actually fall in love, you can't really know what love really means when somebody says, I love somebody. Right. You can relate.
And that's how DMT is. I mean, people can get a understanding. You can watch a million videos from, whoever's talking about it, and people are like, wow, this is cool, But until you actually go through it and you feel, like you said, that out-of-body experience.
Is that what you felt?
Definitely. There's no way. It's an out-of-body experience. You're out. You don't even know you're part of this universe anymore. You're out in the spiritual world, or it's very hard to describe, but you do come back. I was probably gone for about 20 minutes, and you actually feel yourself like coming back.
Oh, is it like a jarring experience? Like, is it kind of jarring?
It's crazy. I mean, once you do the DMT, within seconds, it's just, you're out. You're like no longer conscious. I feel like you're no longer conscious
in your body,
or on Earth, or however you call it. But yeah, in your body, and you're out. And I'm sure there was a lot of things that I went through and I saw.
They say you can't recall a lot of it.
You can't recall a lot, but you do feel like they say, like,
my guess is, this is just a guess, my guess is that much of what we recall today is trapped and due to these brains, our physical bodies. They trap the memories that we have here. So, but I believe that we have these other spiritual residual memories from our true consciousness that's animated in this body, and that is harder because, like you said, this body's in the way. It's in the way of us really connecting with who we really are. But it's done that way on purpose. I mean, there's a good reason for this. We don't want to be just these ethereal spiritual creatures running around, like, playing puppetry with these physical bodies.
But I think that a lot of cultures, maybe even current cultures, but we're talking past cultures, how they were so spiritual. I think they already knew this, and even with yoga and what is it, the Hindu culture? Hindu?
Hindu, yeah.
Hindu? Okay, so I think they've been on the right path forever, and they think that they understand what's going on, and obviously they don't need DMT because they're on a different spiritual, and they know how to tap in to the pineal or however it is that you get to that point. So, but the fact that, I did try the DMT, I don't feel that it's something that I'm going to do again or do often or so on, because I feel like what I needed to see, I saw, and I know what's capable. And now I feel like I can get to the exact point with meditation. And that's my goal, is to become more spiritual, because I think we all have it.
Well, it's been said that it is a natural biological drive for most of us, for all of us, really, is what it was said, to crave or to want to move toward the spiritual, to want to understand ourselves in a more spiritual way, whatever that means to the person. So it makes sense to me, because I do. I was born with that. I know that's what I felt my whole life.
Because, see, with the DMT, it's such a fast experience, and I don't think there's any way possible that you're going to retain any of that stuff. You'll feel the experience. You'll remember some things, but I think through meditation is where you actually will learn. What I'm saying about learning is, like, the experience is like, oh my God, I went through this whole thing. But then you start thinking, like, well, what did I learn from that? Well, what I learned was that there's definitely something else out there, and we're part of something way bigger than we can even imagine. But now I'm thinking, well, through meditation, I can get to this point, and maybe I can work on myself and my spirituality, and kind of learn and bring things back while I'm here to maybe, spread the word to people. And it's a trip. I mean, like even with my animals, with my dogs.
I know you have like 3 dogs, right?
Yeah, I got 4 dogs. But I'm connected. I'm connected with them on such a different level now. It's really so strange.
Tell me about that, because I found that people who are highly spiritual, who either meditate a lot or highly spiritual, they tend, and I've read some stuff about this, that they tend to like animals a lot because.
Well, what happened was after the experience, I looked at everything differently. Everything that has a life, even if it's a tree, I look at it and I'm like, well, you know what? That tree's got a spirit. My dog has a spirit. What makes that dog or that tree or any animal different than me? I feel like, hey, I'm just
having a different experience.
Right. I'm a spirit. I'm in this body, but now that dog is a spirit. That plant is a spirit. And so I feel like now, maybe I'm just more open-minded or.
Well, you definitely had a different kind of experience. So most people, they make their judgments based on this physical experience that they see. They see animals, they have their own life, and they only can really relate to everything as it pertains to how they experience the world, the lenses that they see the world through. So you're obviously, right. I think it sounds like through the psychedelic experience that we get an opportunity to be able to see life through a different pair of lenses.
I think that it gives you a very, very brief snapshot. I mean, even if you're out for however long, it's a brief snapshot. And I think that what you have to take from that is realize, okay, that brief snapshot should be enough for you to understand that there's so much more. And I think, like I said, through meditation, it might be the way to go, because there might be people that can probably do DMT for years on end and probably won't learn anything because they like the feeling. They're like, oh, this was cool.
Well, I know people do microdoses.
You gotta come back.
I know people do microdoses when they smoke it, and you get kind of a euphoric kind of a feeling. I've tried like a microdose, only because that's all I had. I had a little teeny little bit, and you sort of get a little visual thing. Somebody told me to sprinkle it on some cannabis and then smoke it, but it burns, so you really kind of have to vape it or something. So I don't know if I didn't really notice an effect. So, but it was. I'm not too familiar with all the different. I know they have a synthetic, and then they have one that comes from the Bufo alvarius frog. Right. The synthetic is what I had.
I think it's a 5-MDO, something like that.
Yeah, and DMT.
Something like that. But it's from the frog, and so that's the one that I had. And this particular one, I don't know if it was just the way it was, but you're not conscious. You're not looking around. You're not going to see anything. Right. You're completely out. It's like boom, you're out. You come back. It's like it's lights on, lights off, and you're out of your body. It's that fast. And I've never done anything like that. This was like the first thing.
I watched the DMT Spirit Molecule, the one that documentary that Joe Rogan did about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've watched it a couple times now. And the stories and the way they used there was a psychologist, if you remember, who did those psychiatrists who did those experiments in I think it was probably the 80s or 90s, but and he stopped them because I think he was getting some pushback. But they did them, and it was under controlled settings, and everybody who seemed to come through the experiment, they were not people just looking to get high. They were people who wanted to, who were volunteering on a serious way. They were actually people who probably, I think none of them had done it before, but or maybe one of them had, I don't remember, but they all had similar experiences, and they were able to document some of their experiences, their sort of out of body. They all talk about out of body experience. But they all came away, every single one of them came away with, and I've heard this too, I haven't yet talked to anybody who's done it, because I've talked to several people, including yourself, who's done a DMT journey, and nobody has told me that it was not worthwhile, that they all got something valuable out of that somehow.
There's no comparison.
Yeah, that it had value.
There's just nothing. Yeah, like if you asked me if you put a price on that experience, I don't think you can put a price on that, because and I wasn't going to do it. It was strange because, it was the person who I did it with, and he's not just like your recreational guy. He's a spiritual guide, and so he was going to be in town here on the West Coast, and I knew about it maybe a couple months in advance, and I had emailed him, and I was like, yeah, I want to do it, and I chickened out. And the final night before, I just couldn't sleep, and I'm like, God, man, I don't know, like I felt like it was really pulling me, like I had to do this. So I contacted him on the day of, and I said, hey, is it okay? He's like, yeah, sure, come on down. So I went down there, and it was scared, but something just told me just relax and you just do it.
I think that, if we're open to ourselves, to our inner being, I always call our inner being. You can call it your spirit, your soul, but whatever it is, the higher consciousness or infinite consciousness or infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it, that part of us that really animates us, or that part of us that's our true self. I think it speaks to us. I think when we're open to it, it speaks to us. But, so often I think this world closes us off, or we close ourselves off to our own inner intelligence that really is there to help us. And I think ancient shamans knew this, and other cultures knew this. And that's what they're there to do, to help you sort of not block your own inner consciousness, your own inner being, to help you through some of these things.
I mean, the way I see it is, if I never tried it, and I said I'm going to go through meditation and a spiritual path, I feel like it would take me years to even get close to that. And the thing was, I don't know if I would ever get there, because I don't know if I would feel that feeling. So by going this route, I felt the feelings that I felt. Now, as I'm doing the meditation, I can kind of relate to it, and I know when I'm getting close. I know if I'm on track, or if I'm not on track.
For you, what is it when you're getting close to that feeling when you meditate? Because you were describing this the other night to me. What does that feel like? Like what? Because I know what I feel like when I meditate. I feel relaxed. I can kind of feel detached, but
because I'm very new at this, and even meditation in my mind was completely different of what I thought. Now I'm looking into I might mispronounce it. What is it? Kundalini?
Kundalini, yeah.
Kundalini yoga? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going along that route, and I'm trying to do the visualizing. But before that, I was just doing like meditation, where I was basically, a little cannabis, close your eyes, some binaural beats, and I was just basically trying to recall the moment of when I did the DMT.
So you're trying to grab onto some of those memories of feelings?
Well, the feeling of when I did it, like just when you do it and you just like you're out of your body, just that alone was able to get me back into that mode.
So you could actually get yourself back into that space.
I've been able to go back at least 10 times since, but I find it sometimes a little bit harder. So what makes it harder, do you think? You know what? I think if you're not doing it frequently, you're going to lose it. And I feel like,
do you think stress and you being anxious?
Yeah, I just think stress, and even our environment, and you do some research on the pineal gland, and there's a lot of forces that are against this pineal gland. And they even talk about calcifying and all these different things. And I believe that there is a lot of things that's going up against the pineal gland, because guess what? If you got people that are more enlightened, I mean, imagine you have half of the world that feels this, it's going to be a different world.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like, there's a lot of things going up against us, but I just feel like after the DMT, or if you get to a certain point in meditation, you can't just say, oh, I'll do it in a month. I think it's an everyday thing that you must do. Mm-hmm. And I find that if I'm spacing it apart, I'm not doing it for a week or 2 weeks, it's harder to get in. Versus when I was doing it daily, I was going right back in. I was like, oh my God, it was crazy.
How long does that last for you when you meditate like that? That feeling.
Man. Like at first it was just, I was able to just jump right back in. It was actually scaring me, because I would lay back and just, yeah. And there was times where I would try to shake myself out of it, because I would just get scared, because I felt like I'm getting deep or something. I felt like I couldn't come back. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I had that feeling, I was at first, I kept on telling myself, just relax, let go, and I would get pretty deep, and there was even some spiritual conversations that I've had. And
you were saying you had met some spiritual entities or something, or you encounter, because I've heard this before too. People say that they actually have conversations with, they call them aliens or spiritual entities.
I don't really remember seeing any beings, but there were voices, and I'm not sure if they were actually voices or if it's communicating directly into me or my spirit or my soul. But there was definitely some communicating a few of the times that I've been there. And it's just crazy. I mean, maybe I'll save it for another podcast. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty much, I feel like after the first experience, or maybe even the second one afterwards. Now I've only had one DMT experience, but anything that happened after that, when I was able to get into that mode, I honestly feel like it's kind of my calling now in some way.
To investigate?
Not really investigate. And I'm not out there trying to preach and people, to do the DMT or to try it or whatnot, but
just to encourage that connection.
Well, I think people need to be aware that there's definitely something out there, and whatever we've been told and taught and whatever's in books, and I think it's all to just convenience, man.
Well, I think, when I look at how we progressed as a culture from cavemen to from fungi, single cell organisms, all the way through till here, it's a pretty wild ride, and every step was necessary for the one ahead of it. So you can't take